This is a relay project.
Seriously?
Seriously starts now. Here's Supriya and Ryan.
Hey, it's Wednesday, January 11th, and you're listening to Seriously with Supriya and Ryan. I am Supriya Devetti in Toronto.
Ryan Jesperson in Edmonton, and I wish I could fly across the country right now to give you a big hug. I know it's been a brutal few days for you.
I'd love that big hug. Yeah,
I hope it's okay I led
led
with this.
No. That's good to lead with this. So just to cut to the chase, I suppose, I put my dog down this past Friday, Cody. I had him for 15 years. There he is as a pup for those that are watching us on the YouTube stream there. There he is with my daughter. So, once you've had a dog for like 15 years, they really do go through quite virtually every stage of your adult life, right? And I don't know, you and I have known each other for a little bit now, and I think seriously listeners have gotten a little bit of a sense, at least maybe, that, I don't know, I'm not exactly the kind of person that's like, I don't really do outward expressions of grief, I guess, or sadness, and I'm not really much of a crier. But what I've learned recently is that once you actually start crying, Ryan, it's very hard to stop. And then for somebody that doesn't cry, you're just like, what the fuck is the salty discharge that's constantly, dripping down your face? And I don't know, I was a little bit late to do Real Talk with you, the segment that we usually do on Fridays, because I had to fix my eyeliner. I hadn't put him down yet. I was going to do it later that day. And I was just a bit of a mess. And I'm kind of like the queen of compartmentalization, right? I mean, I used to do like 4 years of morning radio where I'm dealing with like live threats that are coming into my inbox as I'm supposed to be like, next, where to get the cheesiest pizza in town,
Yeah.
I don't know. So it was just, the grief is hard and it's complicated, and I don't know. It's not great.
Well, people have to check out this show on YouTube. I know most people hear it on the podcast, but these photos that you've shared with us are absolutely beautiful. And it's amazing. Like we're seeing him with your little one, with you when you were younger.
He's there at
your wedding right there.
Yeah.
That's a stunning photo, by the way. Yeah, dogs are like we have a senior dog in the house, not 15. Gosh, Moses is 10 now. And Monroe, his little sister, she's 3. And Moses is, for boxers, they don't, it always feels weird to talk like this, like to talk about life expectancy and things like that. It's real life. I always think if Moses could speak, he'd be like, I'm fucking sitting right here, you guys. Like, he'd be talking about me. But he's starting to slow down. He's having a bit of a tough time getting up the stairs and things like that. And it's tough to watch. And I'm just, as I would imagine you were as well with Cody, like just trying to honestly take every single second, and you try to find the balance, right? Because you don't want to like treat your dog like they're dying.
Yeah.
But you also want to like squeeze the most out of every moment, because Moses was my first ever dog, ever. Was Cody your first? Did you grow up with dogs or?
No, I did not. I did not grow up with dogs. In fact, my parents, I feel like a lot of Indian or Desi parents do this, where they tell their kids they're allergic, but they're not actually allergic to keep it as an excuse for not getting a dog. I got Cody when I was 22. I'd never had a dog before. He was my first dog. I got him as a puppy. I'm like, I don't really have a close relationship with my parents, or like either of my parents, if I'm being very honest. Like neither of them came to my wedding. Neither of them met my daughter. And so Cody is in a very, very real way,
wow,
the closest and most consistent family member I've had for those last 15 years. And to your point about like he's squeezing every moment. I mean, yeah, you do need to. And like the thing is with grief and with pets, it's hard, but it's also like complicated because you can't really, like, you get it. I know you get it because you're a dog person, right? And like,
I wasn't, though. I am now.
Yeah, but like a lot of dog, if you're not a dog person, I don't know if you get it, right? And so you can't. There isn't that sort of like acceptance to take time off, or to just take time generally to process or whatever. And it just adds this other kind of shitty layer to the already kind of shittiness.
Yeah. And you don't hear the, I've, had, it's actually been an interesting week, like from my perspective, just as a friend of yours and of others, like 3 of my close friends, you included, all had to say goodbye to their pups. My aunt and uncle said goodbye to theirs yesterday. And the day before that, the organizer of our pond hockey classic, our charity fundraiser. So the 3 of you, all families that are close to us, and we've been seeing these photos and reflecting on these memories. And my buddy said to me yesterday, he says it's just like you don't like hear the sounds of the dog. You don't hear like the call, the dog tag banging against the water dish when they're drinking, or you don't hear the click of the nails on the floor.
It's the pause that get it for me. Yeah, the click of the pause. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just like life is different, and I know we'll get hit. We'll get shut down by YouTube for copyright infringement, so we can't use it. But I would refer to people. I don't know if you ever heard Jimmy Stewart read the poem about his dog Bo on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. It's like I think it's about 3 minutes, and it will just make anybody weep. It's beautiful and also very sad. And just a reminder, I'm sure everyone's offering you what feels like platitudes, but
No.
It's like, in a way, when you feel this gaping hole in your heart right now, you also kind of remember about the incredible part of your life that he was and will be forever, right? I mean, 15 years and counting. For the rest of your life, you'll look at those photos, and I would imagine they'll evoke strong emotions, whether you share them with us or show them outwardly or not.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a good way to sort of put things in perspective, because you're right. And I mean, sometimes in the cloud of grief, you sort of lose that sort of overall overarching kind of vision of this. And it's true. 15 years is a very long time. I'll always have those memories. And he taught me how to be an adult, I think. Yeah, I'm just very grateful for our time.
Well, much love to you, my friend. I know it's a tough time, and gosh, everybody with a senior dog can relate. I know it. Much love to you and the whole house. We're going to be talking politics in just a second. Obviously, there's a lot to cover federally and otherwise, but one of the things that I was really jumping out at me, and one of the things that we were paying attention to over sort of more in your neck of the woods in particular, I was like a website down the LCBO had posted to Twitter this week that their website and their mobile app were down because of a cybersecurity incident.
Yeah, it's a little bit weird. They're being somewhat tight-lipped about this. I'd actually checked right before the recording of, we started recording this, and like the website is actually still down as of that time. It just brings up this service unavailable message when you get to the website. And, we don't have the full details yet as to what exactly went down with this, particular site. But this whole thing is just a super good reminder of how important it is to make sure your team gets proper training on cybersecurity, no matter what the industry is that they're working in.
Yeah, no kidding. Like, working with a strong training partner like We Know Training can help protect your business from risks like these, from getting completely shut down. Their expert e-learning team designs training that actually changes behavior so your employees will retain and then act on what they learn.
Yeah, exactly. We Know Training specializes in training for regulated industries, and they are so much more than just your standard LMS.
Yeah, exactly. And so basically this means they do it all, right? If you want to know what that actually translates into, they can create and host and even sell, which is a really big deal, obviously, your courses, and then optimize them to make sure that you see real business results.
And so if you need to train your team, they offer a scalable solution that's ideal for high stakes training that really matters.
If you want to work with a training partner that truly understands your needs, has solutions to your challenges, and delivers amazing value against your business goals, talk to the team at We Know Training.
You can visit their website at weknowtraining.ca or find them in the show notes.
The Lead.
We also want to know about the outsized influence of this company in the operation of our government and our democracy. The company is under investigation for its involvement in politics and government in France. They've had to pay financial penalties for their role in facilitating the sale of opioids into the United States of America that helped deliver a massive drug overdose crisis that is now spread into Canada. And then finally, the director, former director of this company, managed to get himself the gig as our ambassador to China. So it's time for Canadians to get answers. We need to know what this money was for, what influence McKinsey has had in our government. And it is time for Canadian taxpayers to have answers to these questions.
So that there was Pierre Poilievre calling for the House of Commons Government Operations and Estimates Committee to launch a study into these tens of millions of dollars that have gone to the management consulting firm McKinsey, as well as, and you heard in that clip, Poilievre making the very astute observation, and I think it needed to be said, about looking into what exactly the influence that a company like McKinsey has on the operation of our government and democracy writ large. And, Ryan, this was all sort of spurred on by a Radio-Canada investigation. And some of the top line numbers here for what the government spends on McKinsey are just like eye-popping. I mean, the Liberals have spent 30 times more on McKinsey services than the Conservatives did while under Harper. And 9 years of Harper comes out to just over 2 million at 2.2 million. And Trudeau's 7 years comes in at $66 million doled out to McKinsey.
Business is good at McKinsey.
Fuck, no kidding. Business is good at McKinsey, but it's causing, all sorts of rifts within the federal public service, right? As you can imagine, because we're outsourcing huge chunks of, policy creation and directives to this management consulting firm. And, a lot of folks within either formerly in public service or currently in public service are pointing to the fact that, that's actually why you have a civil service and a public service, is that so they can do the policy making and do all these things that we're apparently outsourcing to McKinsey.
Can we say, to state the obvious? I mean, we always promise to cut through the noise and get to the angle that the average, ordinary, regular person is going to take on a story like this. Once you start talking about favors and backroom deals and sole source contracts and scandals, I think of the sponsorship scandal. I think of golf balls and Jean Chrétien. I think of the We charity. This is the type of thing that tends to stick to the Liberals. From a strategic standpoint, politically, I think it's a smart play for Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives. Do you?
100%. This is the kind of thing that should shame the Liberals into oblivion, right? Not only to your point about how this is the sort of thing that sticks, it is just like a caricature, I think, of what Conservatives would paint the capital L Liberals as, right? Out of touch elites that are doing, as you said, backroom-ish type deals for political kind of quid pro quo after the fact. None of it looks good. It doesn't mean that these allegations are necessarily true, but I think the questions that Mr. Poilievre raises with respect to needing to find out more and calling this to committee and looking into some of the details behind these these contracts or these services that were apparently provided is really important. Aside from just an abstract kind of democracy matters sense, it also matters finding how much money we've spent here, right? It's just also dollars and cents. We need to figure out why this much money was sort of doled into this. And
let me ask you, because it is an interesting angle when you talk about, when we're talking about, let's be clear. Let's dig into exactly the types of things that McKinsey Co would be hired to do. Are we talking policy development? Are we talking polling for government departments? Or are we talking about work with the public sector? I don't know that the average person truly understands exactly what this relationship might look like and what essentially the government or the Canadian people are paying for, right? Because if we're going to compare apples to apples, perhaps the Harper Conservatives went in a different direction, or perhaps they used a different firm, or right? To point out that Harper spent $2 million with McKinsey and Trudeau spent $60, maybe Harper hates the guy at McKinsey. Maybe Harper's friend at the other. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of factors that can come into play there. So bigger picture, I like that you're digging into whether or not it's even appropriate. And I think it probably is to a certain degree for efficiencies and otherwise for a government to farm out some of this kind of stuff. What do you think? Yeah.
I mean, I think that's to be understood, right? You're going to farm out, I guess, some of it. I think with respect to McKinsey in particular, though, Mr. Poilievre laid out quite nicely as to all of the things that it's been accused of in the past. If you talk to anybody that's worked in public health or epidemiology for some time, I mean, they will tell you that the McKinseyization of public health communication and policy has been a real detriment. You do raise good points with respect to, like, we don't necessarily know the details, but that's part of the problem here and part of the reason why the Liberals are kind of shooting themselves in the dick over this. Like, if we don't know, then give it to us. Let us know what those reports were actually doing, what those presentations were actually about. We know from, Radio Canada and other organizations now looking into this, that the Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship department, along with the CBSA, the Canada Border Services Agency, was about 44% of what McKinsey was doing. But again, no reports. We don't have any information. There was no details given by McKinsey's part. The only information that I guess journalists were able to glean was from former, civil servants who were quite flabbergasted at the fact that this was even sort of happening to begin with.
So it's not unusual. Obviously, the opposition members on this committee want the probe. They want it done, and politically it would serve their purposes in so many ways as the probe would likely not, or potentially not, might not even want to take the risk, reflect well on the government. So the Liberal committee members vote down this probe. What do you think the optics are of that? It's a predictable outcome, but what are the optics of it?
If all the Liberal members vote this down, if all opposition members, and I think the chair is conservative, then then it goes to, then they study it. But just the optics alone, I think, are bad. Like, I don't think they need another, allegation thrown their way about being elite and out of touch and arrogant, right? Like, that is the sort of thing that sticks to Liberals, for better or for worse, whatever it is. Like, that is, it may not be a fair branding, but it's the branding and that or the perception, rather, I guess I should say, that folks have. And there's been, enough of that sort of thing in, past Liberal governments, to your point, that it is a thing that could definitely stick. And I think if the committee members were smart, they would think about the optics of that. But I don't know if they necessarily always do.
Also, there's this.
You're never going to believe it. Alberta and Ottawa back at it. That's right. It's a battle royale. It's a toe-to-toe fisticuffs. Okay, so it's actually not that big of a deal. But Alberta's Energy Minister, Sonia Savage, is stirring up the dissension, this time aimed at Federal Natural Resource Minister Jonathan Wilkinson. She doesn't like the phrase just transition. She's criticized Alberta's Environment Minister, Sonia Savage. Ottawa's just transition legislation, says it's extremely harmful. Meantime, Wilkinson, for what it's worth, says he wants to dial down the political rhetoric, says that they're not trying to kill Alberta's oil and gas industry, that they're working on supporting sustainable jobs. Sounds like Alberta saber-rattling again. Perhaps this UCP government, Supriya, stirring up some support ahead of a May election, and Ottawa yet again put in a position to have to try to explain how its relationship with Alberta isn't as bad as Alberta says it is. Did I sum it up in a way that you would say is accurate?
Yeah, I think it is. But here's where I don't know. Like, I think they should just fucking scrap it, the term just transition. If it and that's not because I think necessarily that Minister Savage has a great leg necessarily to stand on here. I mean, just transition wasn't something that the Trudeau government just pulled out of thin air. That phrasing and the concept, I guess, really was from that Paris Agreement, right?
2015, right?
Yeah. Like back in 2015. Right. So they didn't invent it. It was put on departmental websites. I believe in the 2019 campaign, it might have been referred to in campaign documents. But to your point, Minister Wilkinson has already said he doesn't really like that language. He says he prefers to talk about sustainable jobs. And I think when you're talking about policy and politics, I mean, comms is a really big part of that, right? And so if you're having trouble selling something as a just transition, and it's going to be easier to sell something as providing sustainable jobs, for the middle class and those looking to join it,
well
then
done.
I think you've got a better sort of sell there. And I don't know if we need to dig in our heels simply because it was language that was used in the Paris Agreement.
Who cares about the language? Nobody cares about the language, except for also in politics, everybody cares about the language, I guess. I mean, you look at the dust-ups that people have had, whether or not carbon pricing should be described as a carbon levy or a carbon tax. And if you oppose it, you probably call it a carbon tax. And if you support it, you probably call it a carbon levy. But it's the same thing, and it costs everybody the same amount, regardless of what we call it.
It does, yes, regardless of what we call it. But I mean, the fact that it's not actually a tax and it's a regulatory charge is a big reason as to why the Supreme Court ended up deciding in the Fed's favor.
You and your details, you and your accuracy, your commitment to bringing us the unfettered truth. But the language does matter in the sense that if something is positive, it can serve to unite and glean support. And if something is perceived or painted to be negative, then obviously it can drive in a wedge. And both approaches serve a purpose for politicians. What this is all about, I mean, it depends, too, on your understanding of what the word just means and how it describes it. A just transition. Couldn't that be described as a way that provides an equitable and perhaps in some cases encouraging opportunity for energy industry workers that might be transitioning to a new green sustainable energy industry? I mean, we're not going to pretend, and I know people trot this out, but it deserves to be trotted out again and again and again. We don't still light our street lamps with whale fat. I mean, things move on. There's not operators moving and plugging in cables so landlines can connect on phone calls. Things transition. Things change. Stephen Harper never pretended like they weren't going to change. Why should this current Liberal government pretend? And why is the current Conservative opposition pretending like it's not eventually going to transition? Like, isn't it actually unjust to energy workers in oil and gas to pretend like their jobs are going to be around forever? Isn't that the injustice?
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, particularly as somebody who's been, trying to talk and get more people to talk about climate change since I've been given a mic in front of my face. But I would just say that in terms of, talking about whether or not this is really a just transition or not, if you have those oil and gas workers that bristle at the very term, maybe because they've seen a couple of memes on Facebook talking about it. Maybe it's been presented to them as like a bit of a, grand conspiracy sort of thing that Trudeau's coming in after your way of life. He's going to take your trucks first, then he's going to, take your job after that. So I don't know. It's like, I am sympathetic to everything you're saying, and I agree with you. But I just think that language does matter. We shouldn't pretend that things are going to be around forever. Things do transition, right? But I think there's probably a better way to be going about that. And for all of the fights that the federal government is fighting on multiple battles, I don't know if the term just transition is one that they, really don't want to compromise or capitulate on.
Yeah, I mean, but this type of stuff can happen overnight, quietly. They put one phrase to bed, they throw a marketing plan out, they introduce a new one, and nobody remembers it. Like what was the idea of the transition called before it was called the just transition?
I have no idea.
Nobody remembers, of course, and that's the whole point, right? But you look at the environment minister, what she has to say, quote, Minister Savage, it means phasing out fossil fuels immediately, keeping them in the ground. Even more than that, and here it is, Supriya, restructuring societies and economies and redistributing wealth. Is that what it means?
No,
is that
of
what
course
it
not.
means?
It's not what it means, but that's
it's
what
not even close to what it means.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to give her a free pass here. I don't think she should be fear-mongering like that. But the problem is that once people already start, then you got to either play defense or you risk your entire policy being mired by this sort of rhetoric.
Yeah, this. I mean, the worst thing that ever happened to this whole movement was, somebody in Fort McMurray saw a Subaru with Free Tibet bumper stickers on one side and Just Transition bumper stickers on the other side, and it just fucked the whole plan.
Seriously?
As the Minister of Citizenship and Multiculturalism, I am proud that Ontario is home to over 900 people from India.
It was Minister Michael Ford, nephew of Premier Doug Ford. who since June of 2022 or since the summer of 2022, whenever they did the cabinet swearing in, has been the Minister of Multiculturalism, speaking in India there.
Hey, he was not wrong. Ontario is home to more than 900 people from India.
Yes, that is technically true.
That is accurate.
Yes, never mind the fact that you can probably find 900 Indians in Ontario in any given moment at a Costco fucking parking lot. But yes, I suppose there are more than 900
He's
people
not wrong.
From India in Ontario. So he's right about that. But yeah, look, he obviously misspoke. I don't want to drag this guy into like some deep dark hole here, but
no, we can just laugh
really
and poke
fucking
fun
dumb
for a
thing
few
to say.
minutes. Yeah. We don't have to drag him into a hole. We'll just mock him. Yeah,
mock him. You pointed out something that I thought was rather interesting in terms of.
I'm just wondering where all the Conservatives are with a white politician from Canada showing up and playing costume party in India, because I was pretty sure that this has been described as one of Justin Trudeau's greatest disgraces. Everybody knows. Everybody is getting the vivid recollection of that picture in their mind of Justin Trudeau playing costume party in India. So where's the criticism from the Conservatives with Minister Mikey here?
Great question. But can I just clarify something for all of the white people that were so offended at either Minister Mikey or the Prime Minister in Indian clothes? Old Indian aunties love it when white people wear Indian clothes, okay? If you've ever been to a fucking Indian wedding in your entire life and there's a white woman in a sari, all of the old Indian women will circle her, tell her how good she looks. They'll ask her who dressed her, how did she get it on? Like my best friend she's white, and at my wedding, I can assure you that every single woman there went up to her and went, "Oh, Erin, you look so good in sari." Every single one, because she did.
So maybe we didn't see this curveball coming. A pat on the back. And a round of applause for Minister Mikey.
There we go.
Hitting it out of the park.
Nepo baby Minister Mikey.
Hitting it out of the park in India. Hey, every single Wednesday, we promise to cut through the BS, to cut through the noise of the stories that are making news, and maybe some that deserve a bit more of a spotlight across the country.
Yeah, and as always, we want you to keep in touch with us. You can follow us on Instagram at SeriouslyPod, on Twitter at Supriya and Ryan. Check out our website as well, seriouslypod.com.
And thanks to everybody who likes, subscribes, and shares our content. We'll talk to you again next week.
Seriously is hosted by Supriya Dwivedi and Ryan Jesperson. Technical producer, John Hicks. Executive producer, Josh Dunford. Account coordinator, Lawrence Norlego. General manager, Katie Cook-Shivers. Human resources, Lena Shepard. Voiceover by me, Tangi. Seriously is a relay project. For more, check out seriouslypod.com.